March 23, 2022, Singapore, 9 a.m. A senior engineer at a billion-dollar crypto gaming company sits at his desk. He clicks twice on a file named offerletter.pdf. He smiles. He thinks he just landed a massive promotion. 6 days later, his bosses check the company bank accounts. $620 million is gone. The money did not trigger an alarm. It did not break a firewall. It just walked out the front door. And nobody noticed for nearly a week. Stop and think about that for a second. If someone robs a bank of $10,000, die packs explode, alarms scream, and police surround the building in 3 minutes. This was $500 million. It vanished in absolute silence. You can spend $50 million on military-grade encryption. You can hire the best cybersecurity experts on the planet. But it is completely useless against the guy who just really wants a 20% raise. To understand how a single computer file broke one of the largest financial networks on the internet, you have to understand the target. Do not think of the Ronin Network as a website. Think of it as a digital nuclear submarine. It was built to process transactions for a massive online game called Axie Infinity. Millions of players were trading digital assets every day. The network acted as a bridge. It held all the real-world money while players used digital tokens inside the game. Because it held so much cash, the security design was to be paranoid. It relied on something called a validator node system. Imagine a massive steel vault. To open this vault, you don't use a password. You use 9 distinct cryptographic keys. These keys are held by 9 different digital generals spread across the network. To authorize a transfer of money out of the vault, you need 5 of those 9 generals to turn their keys at the exact same time. The math protecting these keys is dense. It's flawless. If you tried to guess the passwords using the most powerful supercomputer on Earth, the sun would burn out before you cracked the code. The executives slept soundly because the math told them they were invincible. But the hackers did not attack the math. They attacked the generals. This brings us to the architects of the heist, the Lazarus Group. These are not teenagers in a basement. They are a state-sponsored heist syndicate from North Korea. They do not operate with a ticking clock. They operate with endless patience and a deep understanding of human weakness. They knew the Ronin Network was a fortress. They knew they couldn't break the steel. So they decided to build a slow, psychological trap. They didn't write a brute force of virus. They built a fake company. They created a highly professional, entirely fabricated corporate entity. They built a website. They wrote fake employee reviews. They populated LinkedIn with fake executive profiles. Then, they went hunting. They spent weeks scouting the employees of the Ronin Network on LinkedIn. They were looking for a very specific profile. They needed someone with high-level access, but more importantly, they needed someone ambitious. The Lazarus Group reached out to him posing as corporate recruiters. They offered him a glimpse of a dream job. But they didn't just hand it to him. That would be suspicious. They made him work for it. They put this engineer through a grueling, multi-week interview process. He sat through multiple rounds of technical exams on Zoom. He was grilled by fake managers. He sweated over coding tests. He spent his evenings preparing for these interviews, completely unaware that the people evaluating his answers were elite cybercriminals mapping his psychology. This is the greatest lockpick in the world. It's not a line of code. It's the human ego. By the time they finally sent him the job offer, his guard was entirely gone. He felt like he had earned it. He felt special. Are you starting to see the genius here? The greatest bank robbers in the world didn't use a drill. They conducted a 3-week HR interview. When the email arrived with the attached PDF, the engineer did exactly what any of us would do. He downloaded it to his work computer and clicked open. The PDF looked completely normal. It had a company logo, salary details, and a benefits package. But buried deep inside the code of that document was a silent, microscopic piece of spyware. The moment the file opened, the malware bled into the computer's memory. It didn't freeze his screen, it didn't pop up a ransom note. It quietly opened a back door into the Ronin Network's internal systems and handed the keys to the Lazarus Group. The hackers were in. But immediately, physics hit reality. The spyware gave them total control over the engineer's access. Because of his senior status, they managed to hijack 4 of the validator keys. 4 of the digital generals were now compromised. But remember the blueprint of the fortress. You need 5 keys to open the vault. They only have 4. They're stuck. They're standing inside the most secure network in the crypto world, holding 4 keys to a $620 million vault. And the door will not budge. If they try to force the 5th key, or if they try to bypass the consensus mechanism, the system will detect the anomaly. It will instantly freeze the network, lock down the funds, and the hackers will get absolutely nothing. The clock is ticking. Every single second they stay inside the network, they risk detection. A routine security sweep, a random audit, or just a vigilant IT guy looking at server logs could expose them. The tension is massive. You have $500 million sitting inches away, separated by a single cryptographic lock. If you were in that position, you would probably panic. You might try to write a fast exploit or launch a messy brute force attack. But the Lazarus Group did not panic. They started looking for a window that someone forgot to lock, and they found one. This is the exact moment the perfect plan collides with the idiot factor. How do they get the 5th key? They do not hack it. They just walk through an open door that the company left wide open 4 months earlier. In December 2021, the Axie Infinity game had a massive spike in user traffic. Millions of new players were joining, and the Ronin Network was struggling to process the sheer volume of transactions. The system was bogging down. The executives were facing a crisis. Slow networks mean angry players, and angry players mean lost revenue. So, the administrators made a panicked decision to speed things up. They temporarily reached out to a third-party group called the Axie DAO. They gave this group a validator node. They essentially handed them a temporary 5th key to help approve transactions and ease the load on the network. It was supposed to be a temporary fix, a digital band-aid. They literally propped the titanium vault door open with a brick to let the crowd through. And then, when the traffic slowed down, they forgot to remove the brick. For 4 months, that temporary permission sat there, active but forgotten. The access was never revoked. The security team overlooked it. It was an administrative oversight, a forgotten checkbox on a Friday afternoon. The Lazarus Group found this forgotten permission. They routed a forged request through the compromised system, reached out to the Axie DAO node, and essentially said, "Hey, the other 4 generals agree on this, can you sign off?" Because the old permission was still active, the system complied. It grabbed the 5th key. The 5th lock turned green. Imagine digging a perfect tunnel into the Federal Reserve, drilling through 3 feet of solid steel, realizing your drill bit is ½ an inch too short, and then noticing the security guard left the vault door cracked open so he could hear the radio. The massive digital vault silently swung open. The hackers did not hesitate. In 2 rapid automated transactions, they drained the accounts. 173,600 Ethereum and 25.5 million USDC stablecoins. $620 million in total value. The money flowed out of the vault and into anonymous wallets controlled by North Korea. There was no alarm. There was no automated kill switch. The system functioned exactly as it was programmed to function. 5 keys were turned. The transaction was approved. A billion-dollar tech empire was brought to its knees because an administrator forgot to uncheck a box before going home for Christmas. But the stealing of the money is only step 1. The hackers now faced a massive logistical nightmare. You can't just put $620 million of stolen cryptocurrency into a regular bank account. The entire point of the blockchain is that it's a public ledger. Every single transaction is visible to anyone with an internet connection. The FBI, the NSA, and thousands of amateur sleuths were watching those hacker wallets within hours of the discovery. If the hackers tried to move that money to an exchange to cash it out, the accounts would be frozen instantly. They were holding radioactive money. How do you hide $500 million when the whole world is watching you? You don't hide it. You shred it. The Lazarus Group began pumping the stolen funds through a crypto tumbler called Tornado Cash. Think of a tumbler as a massive digital blender. Thousands of people put their money into the blender at the same time. The machine mixes it all together, scrambles the digital signatures, and spits the money back out to different addresses. When the stolen Ethereum went into Tornado Cash, the public trail shattered. The money was broken down into tiny, untraceable fractions and washed clean. It was a flawless getaway. By the time the authorities managed to sanction the tumbling service, a massive chunk of the funds had already disappeared into the background noise of the internet, funneled directly into the North Korean state weapons program. The company eventually realized the money was missing 6 days later, only when a user tried to withdraw $5,000 and the system threw an error saying the vault was empty. The panic that followed was historic. The price of the gaming token crashed. Investigations were launched. Press releases were drafted. But the real legacy of the Ronin hack is not the money that was lost. It's the absolute paranoia it injected into the global tech industry. Before this hack, companies believed that if they built a strong enough firewall, they were safe. They focused entirely on external threats. They audited their code. They tested their servers. Because of this single PDF, every major tech corporation in the globe had to stop and look at the people sitting at the desks. They had to rewrite their internal security protocols from the ground up. They realized that giving a senior engineer permanent and unilateral access to core systems was a catastrophic vulnerability. The industry was forced to adopt a strict zero-trust architecture, not just for software, but for employees. Today, if an engineer needs to access a critical node, they don't have a permanent key. They have to request temporary access, which requires secondary approvals, and that access expires in minutes. They splintered the power. The Lazarus Group proved a terrifying reality. They proved that the strongest lock in the world is completely useless if you can manipulate the person holding the key. You can patch a server, you can update a firewall, you can invent new cryptography, but you can never, ever patch human nature.